Hello everybody, welcome back to the latest JC tutorial. Today we're going to do a flight video in the EC135. This is the second time I'm recording it because the first time for some reason the video got really crappy. So the quality was really bad, so we're going to go ahead and fix that. So let's make sure our hover height 0. Alright, so real quick, we're going to go over a few things. I have a few things keybound to gestures that you may or may not actually ever want. First is MLT. That's keybound to the number 1, so I can pop in and out of that to go to the interactive cockpit or do my anti-torque pedals. Next is I have FC, which is fine control. That's keybound to the number 2. So I can turn that on and off. You'll find that with the EC135, fine control is kind of needed, especially when you're coming into certain places. You need a little bit more control because this helicopter can get a little squirrely on you. For example, today we're going to go ahead and be landing up on a mountain up there at the request of the boss. So you'll see as I get in closer to that, I'm going to switch in the fine control so that I can have a little bit more control. Things are going to be a little easier for hovering in a small, tight, confined area, because if we come off the mountain, we'll lose our in-ground effect, and we don't want that. Sorry, I just spammed that button by accident. So we're going to go ahead and take off, circle around the lake, do a max performance climb so that we can get up to our mountain. We're going to go ahead, it is Mount Canaan. So we're going to go ahead, right click, and show on map so I can get a waypoint put up there so that we make sure that we hit the right mountain. And you'll see it is a very small hill mountain that we're going to be landing on, and there's not really a nice flat area, so we're going to have to kind of hover around for a little bit and get good and steady before we set her down. So we're going to go ahead and shut that off. We're going to switch off our interactive cockpit controls because we don't need anything, and RPM's top of the green, no warning lights or horns, engine gauges are green, fuel sufficient, clear above. We're going to do a max performance takeoff so we can clear this tower right here in front of us. So as we start raising collective, we're going to get light on the skids, correct our nose with left click and a little bit of pedal action here. Control, turn that off. Ooh, a little too much pedal. Alright, so we're right there, we're light on the skids, so we're going to raise that collective, get some nice altitude, a little more, correct our nose, and then clear forward. So we're going to stay about 60-70 knots while we continue to climb, because we do have a decent bit of altitude to gain to get up to that mountain. So we're holding about 2,000 foot per minute climb. We're going to circle around in this sim, and then we're going to go over, we're going to survey, figure out the best possible approach to that mountain. So we can shoot that in one approach. We don't have to do multiple approaches to get up there. Yes, that sim does not, for some reason those two sims do not like each other. So as we get closer, you'll see my mountain that we're aiming here for pop in. That should be about high enough. We're gonna lower that collective, but we're gonna go ahead and maintain our speed between 60 and 70. Just so that's a little easier to get down on that mountain once we get up there. A little bit of pedal there. Since we're moving forward, we don't need nearly as much left pedal as we would. So that's our mountain right there. As you can see, it's not a flat top mountain. We're going to do half orbit. I already know which way I want to approach it from so that I can line up nicely on that. So we're going to do a half orbit, swing it around to the north side, and you'll get a nice shot of it here in a second. Look at that. Down slope. A little bit of a flat area right there. It looks like it from here, but it really isn't. You'll see when we get down there that that is not flat by any definition of the word. Kind of see it there. Alright. So we're going to go on our downwind here. Extend one sim to the north, turn around, and shoot that approach. I'm going to try to get into a nice stable hover over the mountain. And then we're going to try to set it down nice and gentle on top of the mountain. Mind you that this helicopter is, yes, a little squirrely, so once we do get into our hover, it may take a little bit, and then we need to find a stable position to hold the helicopter in once we actually get it on the ground. A few other times I've shot this approach, the helicopter kind of slides down the hill. We're a little low. So we'll raise collective, get back above the mountain so we can shoot an approach. Start slowing down here. Alright, once we come in, we're gonna stop climbing here. Half cyclic, begin slowing down. And as we slow down, we know that we're gonna need left pedal. Raise that collective just a little bit. There's our hill. Not too much. Alright, so we're gonna switch into fine control mode here. Drifted back over that mountain. And we're gonna come down on that nice and gentle. So we are in fine control now. Nice and gentle. Give it a second to catch that in-ground effect. It's going to give us an increase in rotary efficiency. And try to stay nice and gentle. Open my door here so I can kind of get a little bit better view of what's going on here. Forward just a little bit. So for those of you who have been worried about the amount of controls needed to keep the EC135 stable, I can tell you it's more realistic. You can turn off some of the realism factors to deal with that. Oh, starting to drift. But it is more realistic because there is no one place that you can hold the controls in a real helicopter that's going to keep the helicopter perfectly still. That just doesn't exist. So you are constantly having to do microcontrol inputs in real life. So as you can see, I'm making a lot of control inputs, but you can see my cyclic moving there. They're really small, fine control inputs, especially with fine control on. It makes my normal inputs even smaller so that I can kind of keep this helicopter in one stable place. There we go. A little more right pedal. So the only downside to fine control is the reduction of pedal authority. Alright, so we're going to come forward a little bit. Try to catch this apex here. There we go, right about here. That's where I want to try to set it down. Alright, so we're low power. So we're slowly going to lower that collective, putting full weight onto our skids to see if our helicopter is going to start sliding. So as we slowly lower collective, let the helicopter settle. You can see we're still moving a little bit here. It looks like we might be moving a little hard to the right, so we're gonna apply a little bit of right cyclic here, left cyclic, sorry. Not too much. Come on, there we go. And get that collective all the way down. See, we're starting to tip. So apply that cyclic over. You may or may not actually be able to go all the way down collective here. Alright, I'm going to cam out so you can see what's happening here. So as you can see, we're kind of sliding slowly over. That back skid is at a low point. So at this point, I wouldn't stay here too long. Just long enough to get some pictures. Not going to shut the helicopter fully down or lower the collective anymore. I've got a lot of right cyclic in here. So we're slowly going to raise collective, let the aircraft settle back up. While we raise that collective, we're going to recenter our cyclic so that when we get to where we're going to pick up, oh shit, pedal, pedal, pedal. So we're getting really light on the skids here. Bring our cyclic over. We might have shifted into a better position right there. Let's try lowering that collective and see where we go. Kind of rocking backwards a little bit. Alright, we're neutral. Slowly rocking a little bit backwards. So we're not going to shut down here. It's not a stable landing position, but we are on the mountain. So we're going to try to pick up back into a hover. We don't need ground reference anymore. We're going to try to pick up into a hover here. Okay, due to the pedal that I know we're going to need, I'm going to take fine control off. We want to try to go straight up, but I have a feeling that we're going to kind of slide around a little bit here. And come up. Alright, so we're going to go down and set it down at the Coast Guard station. And then we're going to go ahead and we'll go out to the Blake and do a quick short flight around the Blake. Go over a little bit more of our movement controls, about a few things, other special key features that we have in the helicopter here. So we are kind of high. We got a long ways to go. Fastest way, takeaway lift. So we're going to enter an auto rotation here. There we go. We're in full auto rotative state. You can see we have no power driving the rotor blades at this time. So right now we're kind of just gliding down. Our airspeed's getting a little low, so we want to get a little more airspeed. Build that airspeed back up. Alright, we're going to slowly take in power. Stop our rate of descent. Right, we're going to swing it around and line up for the Coast Guard station here. Keep our speed on the low side. We're a little low. There we go. So now as we approach the Coast Guard station, I'm going to go ahead and enter fine control. It's going to give me just a wee bit more control authority here. And we're going to go ahead and start slowing on down. As we slow, we know we need more power to maintain our hover. Right, so we're going to keep an eye on that power as it slowly drops. We're going to also need, see there goes a big drop. As we get closer to ETL, we're going to raise that collective, which means we're going to have to put in more pedal. And as we come over the roof, we're going to enter ground effect, which means improved rotor efficiency. bit of acyclic to slow down. And then it just becomes keeping yourself lined up with the helipad, keeping your nose straight as we lower collective, which means we're going to need less left pedal every time we lower that collective. And bringing it nice down and gentle into the helipad. And this is what we were talking about. It's a little squirrely. The helicopter likes to drift a little bit. Fine control definitely helps you maintain that. Bring our nose back around. And set it down. A little off center. Not too bad though. So, give me just a second, we're going to pop over to Chase Field, and we're going to go again. So, collective full down, so I'm just going to go ahead and stand up and take this helicopter, because that way we're already running by the time we get over to Chase Field. And we're going to head out into the Blake, cover just a few more control inputs, and a few other options that are included with this helicopter that you may or may not know how to actually operate. So we're going to pop this down. Forget which way it's going to be. And of course it's in the ground, which we don't want. And it shut itself off. Bad helicopter. You weren't supposed to shut off. It's okay. We can just start it back up. Boom. We're just going to go ahead and kick her back up. And damn it, quit it, go away. There we go, lower that collective, get that horn off. Alright, fine controls off. We're going to be a little less gentle this go around. We're going to be a little more rough on our controls, get you a little better idea. Options, connect. Alright, so a few things to note. We have right here is our MM, which is our mass moment. The more aggressive you are on the controls, the more stress is applied to the helicopter, to the main mass, to the rotors, and to the body of the helicopter. So your goal as a pilot is to stay below that red line when operating this aircraft. You can see as I apply, what's happening here is we're not moving, but the rotor head is moving, so it's still applying some stresses to the helicopter. So we're going to go ahead and pick up. Oh yeah, for those of you who don't know, these are the 3 control windows of your HUD. This is our engine performance meter, so it's got our torque and our torque red lines that we need to worry about. It's your flight meter, airspeed, altitude, compass. Now behind this, you'll see that little yellow line coming up and coming down. That is your VSI, telling you where to go. And then this is our fuel gauge, and these are your warning windows. Anything in this column deals with our left engine, engine number 1. Anything in this column is the right engine, engine number 2. Anything in the center pertains to both. So we're going to be here, but from time to time we'll switch back and forth, depending on what we're doing. So we're going to go ahead and raise that collective, come up into a nice steady hover, taxi forward. Remember, you're going to be on these controls at all times. This is not, you know, hey, I'll just put it into a hover and go off and do whatever, you know, go to the bathroom, go grab a drink. The EC135, you can't do that. From the time you pick up to the time you set down, you are always making control inputs to keep this aircraft stable and steady. We'll talk about the GPS here in a minute, I'm sorry, not the GPS, the autopilot in a minute. That'll be part of this video. But for first, we're just going to go ahead and take off and show you some of this that you need to worry about and why it's important. So obviously this is a roleplay factor. If you have, if I'm remembering correctly, if you have the malfunctions or the failures turned on, breaking going above that red line can actually increase your failure rate. Yes, we have random failure rates. They're in that menu. You can turn failures on, but for this video, I have failures turned off, but they are there. So for those of you who want a little more realism, want something cool to do, fly around with your failures turned on. Engine failure, I know there's a tail rotor failure, and I'm not sure which other ones we have active in that menu right now. I'll have to get my note card out and read it. I was away for a while some development was being done, so kind of lost track of some of the development stuff. Alright, so as you can see, my whole taxi and takeoff, very low movement, but we're going to go over here. If you see, as I turn hard, that is going to start coming up. The harder you turn, the faster that is going to come up. And it's not just turning right makes it go up or turning left, any control inputs at all. So we're going to turn a hard left turn. You're going to see that is going to come screaming up. There you go. Okay, we made our turn really fast, but that came screaming up. And we had to stop our turn quick to prevent going over into the red. Now it goes over into the red sometimes on sim crossings. That's just the nature of SL. Kind of have to deal with it. Not much we can do with that. But even if I were pulling hard aft or hard forward, you're going to see that's going to increase your as well. And then eventually, as the aircraft settles into its new position, that is going to start coming down. So there was a red line due to a sim crossing. So as the aircraft, everything conforms to its new position, that starts coming down. And the reason why it keeps going up in turns is because the rest of the aircraft never aligns with your rotor head as you're turning, because you're constantly in a turn. So the harder your controls, it's a good way to help you, especially in flight with this aircraft, with the way the controls are. If you actively keeping your aircraft out of the yellow zone or well away from the red zone, it's going to help you in the long run with controls. So the meter is also right there in case you don't want to be on that screen, you want to be on this screen. So right there, that's our VSI. So if I lower that collective, you can see that VSI drops right there. So next thing we're going to cover is trainer mode. In trainer mode, you simulate an engine failure. The engine doesn't actually go out or go idle. What happens is the computer simulates that engine has failed via your gauges here, and you know between your gauges where you need to operate that aircraft so that you can stay safe. Keep the additional stress down on that aircraft. So right here is our training selector. So turn on our interactive cockpit. And as you can see there, we are in training mode. So I'm going to go ahead and take engine number 1. And we're going to go to train mode on engine number 1. So you can see, engine number 2. So you can see engine number 2 is out. This is what I would be looking at if I was flying realistically with one engine. That torque is now all being produced by a single engine instead of being divvied up over the two engines, which means I now have to pay attention because now I'm actually close to my red line. And if you go on a sim crossing, jackrabbit, if we go here, we're actually above our red line. That little red line, I don't know if you can see it, it's about 90 knots. That red line is your single engine red line. So what's going to happen, we're going to slow down so that we can kind of get under that 90 knot and go straight and level. And that keeps me below my red line. So I'm not descending, I'm straight and level, 81%. And I am straight and level here. So that's operating via one engine. Now, yes, you can turn that engine off and completely operate actually in one engine by, in fact, doing exactly that without turning the switch on. That will shut off that engine or send it back to idle. So what we're going to do is we're going to go back to flight, and we're going to do that just to give you an example here. Okay, as you saw, that engine RPM never changed. Now what's going to happen is I'm actually going to send that engine to... So now engine number 2 is actually going down to idle. You see there it is, it's at idle. If I were to flip open that case and lock it, I'm sorry, unlock that case and actually shut it down, we would actually be operating with only one engine on, which you can see, as you see here, we actually have an increase in torque from engine number 1 and a decrease in torque from engine number 2. So I'm going to bring engine number 2 back online, and those torques will balance back out to what they should be. Okay, for those of you who use the autopilot, I don't, but for those of you who do or want to use, we're going to go over everything. So, indicated airspeed, altitude, heading, vertical speed. Okay, to turn it on, simply click which of these you want to hold. So we're going to hold our altitude and our indicated airspeed. Oh, sorry, that's set to 0. Indicated airspeed is set to 0. So we're going to deselect that, shut that off. So we're going to hold altitude on a sim crossing. Damn you, sim crossings. Okay, so we're going to hold altitude. We're going to get, so watch, as you watch, okay, we're not holding heading, so I got to do heading. So let me get back my nose straight here. Okay, now we're going to also hold heading. Okay, so watch. Now as I increase our airspeed, you're going to see down here, my collective is going up by itself. You can see up here, I'm not doing anything. My collective is going up by itself. My anti-torque will end up changing as well if you watch as I increase my airspeed, because this is maintaining my altitude of 213 feet. Which is not this altitude. This is in meters. This is in feet. Okay? So now if I slow way down, see my collective is going to decrease there. Now it's going to increase to counteract my reverse thrust, which we are going hard in reverse. Okay, now we're going to do a barrel roll. Bear with me. Remember what I said, the aircraft controls are a wee bit twitchy. That applies also when we are in the aircraft. So we're high right now. As you can see, we're almost 300 feet. So it's going to begin to descend down to where we need to be. So if I put it into a stable hover, it's going to continue to descend. You can see my anti-torque is operating down there, and that's all operating by itself based off of the autopilot. Come down to a 0. And as you can see, our VSI is coming to neutral because we are in fact approaching our 213 feet. Okay, now if you want to change these, which is completely changeable as well, you're going to use your selector to highlight one of these. Okay, whichever number is green is who you're highlighting. Okay, so we're holding a heading of 087. So we're going to go ahead and increase that to a heading of 280 degrees. As you can see, helicopter turns itself. If I want to change my altitude, select altitude, and just go to whatever altitude you want. So we're going to go to 500 feet. So there's 500 feet. See, we're climbing. We're still turning because I set in that 280, which we're now approaching 280 is west. So we're off just a little bit, but it should correct that. Let's see. So where are we? Wow, we're climbing really slow. So what we're going to do is we're going to select vertical speed. We are going to... Oh, because altitude got turned off. Okay, so 900 foot per minute. So we're going to select... This is going to draw down some serious power here. Watch this. 500 feet. Oh, VSI is off. And go VSI. Oh, I can only have one selected. Ah, oh, sad face. Well, we were skyrocketing up there. Here. There's 900 VSI, so now we're going to go ahead and climb at 900 feet per minute. And we're going to select altitude. When you select altitude, airspeed, heading, it's going to automatically, if you don't have something inputted there, it's going to pick what your new thing is, okay? So I'm going to turn off, telling me that that's off. Oops, turn that back on. So we're going to go over here. So now we're not at 280 anymore. So select my heading, boom, 258. That's my new heading. That's where I'm at. So the same works for our airspeed indicator. So we're going to select this so that we are holding 500 feet. Fine control got turned on. So we're going to push forward. And bring it around to the right just a little bit. Yep. See, I can't bring it to the right because my heading indicator. So we're going to select that heading indicator, and I want to go west, which is up to 280. So we're on that sim crossing. Okay. So now I'm going to go ahead and throw in, oops, I got to select my airspeed. We're going to select our airspeed, and we're going to select 100 knots. There it goes. Come on. Alright, and go. Alright, so now we are autopilot holding our altitude, airspeed, and our heading. Okay? So now we are going south. So now, I'm sorry, west. Wow. Can't talk today. So we are going west at 100 knots. We're a little fast, but here it should be slowing down. We're holding altitude. And we're off of just a little bit off of west. Okay. So now I don't want to go west anymore. I want to go south. So we're going to hit this. We're going to wait for that next sim crossing because I don't want to be pushing buttons while we're crossing. As you can see, someone trying to land. 47? 47 or 380, I can't tell from this distance. Whee! Skyrocketed into the ground. So now we're going to go south. South is 180. Crap. Too busy looking at the jet. Wasn't paying attention. Alright, so we set for 180. Helicopter turns. Shallows up our turn. And then it's going to come in. We're still holding our 100 knots and our altitude. Here's our compass turning us westbound, which we're on a sim crossing. Wait for it. Wish I just realized we're on the approach path to Hollywood. And there's us leveling off southbound. Now because I don't want to be on the approach path to Hollywood, I still have my heading selected. We're going to go back to 280. Wait for it. Wait for that sim crossing. There's that sim crossing, so we're going to go back, begin turning. Boom, 280. See, we're turning. Our MM never got into the orange. Sim crossing. Alright, it's rolling out on 280. Now, you have a hover button here, which if we click that hover button, that's going to bring you, hold your heading, and it's going to hold your altitude. It's going to bring your airspeed to immediately to 0. Now it's going to set your airspeed to 0. Okay. Okay, so this is bringing us into a hover, so we want to then go down. So we're going to select our VSI, and we know that at 0 speed, we can't exceed 300 feet per minute for vortex ring's sake. So we're going to set for 200, and we're going to set VSI, which is now going to lower that collective 200 foot rate per minute at 0 airspeed. It's going to keep us out of vortex ring state, but it's going to allow us to descend at a safe rate so we can go straight down. Okay, and then when you're done descending, simply hit altitude. It'll lock in whatever altitude you're at, which in our case is 450. 450, set, and we're done. Shut off your autopilot altogether. The disconnect button, as you can hear, audible beep, letting you know that you have been disconnected. Kind of giving you that heads up of, hey, you're not under autopilot control anymore. Somebody needs to be flying this helicopter. So we're going to head back to Chase. We're going to do a running landing into Chase because I haven't had very much luck with full down autos yet. So we're going to do a running landing into Chase. Running landing. Come in for a shallow approach. You're at high density altitude. Maybe you're down one engine. You don't have the power to land, okay? To hover, sorry. You don't have the power to sit into a hover because you're down on one engine. As you saw earlier, at 80 knots, we can be pulling almost full power while hovering. So what are we going to do? We're going to do a running landing. We're going to land like an airplane. Perfectly acceptable, happens in real life all the time, especially at airports that have high density altitude, which very well could happen here in SL because we do have several airports that are up in the sky, which means their altitude is increased, which means their density altitude is going to be increased. So there very well may be a time that you have to perform a running landing into an airport here in SL. So we're going to show you how to do it. So what we're going to do, we're going to turn on final for Chase Field. We're going to go ahead and begin descending. We're already ridiculously high for this approach anyways. So you want to do a shallow approach, about 5-degree approach. You're going to have to just use your best judgment, but you're going to look shallow. Okay, you want it to look fairly shallow on the approach. And then once we get close, we're going to slow down to about 40 knots, putting us about the ETL range. We want to touch down at or above ETL. So we're going to go ahead and do this full simulated in train mode, one engine off, so you can kind of see what I'm talking about here. So we're keeping forward momentum until the last minute. You can already see our that one. You already see we're needing a lot of power to sit here and try to pull in the power so we can hover here. Just so we're flying straight and level, we're pretty high on power usage. So we're going to go ahead and start slowing down, allow the aircraft to start coming down. We're holding about 200 rate per minute, which is good. Right about where we want it. And we're just going to coast it in nice and gentle. Just before touchdown, we're just going to raise that collective just a little bit to kind of cushion our landing. Okay, we're a little fast, so we're going to slow down. Lower that collective so we're back descending. Just before touchdown, just raise that collective just a little bit. And we're skids down. Helicopter doesn't really slide that much, blame SL. So, as you can see, we're pretty high on our available power. So then you would lower power. So if we were to try to come in and hover here, we're pretty low density altitude wise, so it's not that big of a deal here. But if we were a couple hundred feet higher, density altitude is going to be a lot higher, so we're sitting right near that red line. So if I increase that, see now we're passing that red line. Now we're up to 100% throttle, or 103% torque. Passing all kinds of red lines here. I think we max out actually at 140. Yeah, see. Passing 140% torque on is a bad thing in this helicopter. That's why. The alarm comes on. No actual warning. It's just an alarm. So now we're going to crash ourselves. Forward speed and raise collective. Oh, look, we actually caught ourselves. If I didn't have any, if I was in idle, we would have actually done a hover auto. Alright, so that concludes the intro. I'm going to go ahead and see if I can simulate. I think I have tail rotor failure script. Give me just 1 second. I'm going to get over here to the side of the ramp. Let me come out of instruct mode. Trainer off and put our guard back down. Alright, as I fly over top of some of these helicopters here. So I'm going to actually come out, go into third person. I think I still have the tail rotor failure script, which is going to initiate automatic tail rotor failure. So tail rotor failure can be will be indicated by nose right yaw, which is uncorrectable by left pedal. At least the emergency procedure for an R22 is to immediately roll the throttle into the over travel spring, allow the aircraft to settle, raise collective just before touching down to cushion your landing. So we're going to attempt to use the R22's emergency procedure for a tail rotor failure in the EC130. So we're going to pop out to third person here. I'm going to open this. Let me see if I have that failure script in here. Should be right at the top of my scripts folder while I still try to hover this. Haha, okay. So as you know, we have our gesture, which is number 3. I think, no, it's number 4. Now I gotta look. So what we're gonna do is we're immediately gonna pop the engines into, or we're gonna let it fly for a little bit with where are all, that's objects, I want gestures. I just want to make sure I hit the right freaking button. Okay, so 4 is going to be our engines to idle. So we're going to let it fly for a little bit with the tail rotor off so you can kind of get an idea of what's going to happen. We're going to attempt to recover by putting the engines into idle, allowing the aircraft to settle. Once the aircraft settles, we're going to raise collective just before touching the ground to cushion our landing. Okay, so here we go. There's our tail rotor failure. You can see gear is falling out. It should actually be a lot faster than that. So if we were to try to set down right now, what's going to happen is we're spinning, we could roll over. So what we're going to do is engine to idle. We're going to come down, raise collective. Oh, raised a little too soon. We had a hard rotor. We had a hard landing. I couldn't really see where we were. Let me see if I can repair that. We're going to try that one more time from the cockpit and get a little better idea. Actually, I should just be able to pick right back up into a hover. Oops. Alright, so engine's back to flight. Let our RPMs come back up. What this does is by putting those engines into idle, you're taking torque out of the main rotor system, so you have less spin. No torque, no spin. And you're raising that collective so that you can cushion your landing. It increases the pitch in the blades so you can kind of cushion your landing a little bit. So we know our tail rotor is out, so as soon as we pick up, alright, so this is a tail rotor failure. We're failed, we're spinning. So we're entering in 3, 2, 1. Engines to idle. Start falling. Raise collective. Oh god, lag spike. Ugh, there we go. After you saw the lag spike, you could see kind of. Let's get one more time, see if we can do this without a lag spike. And this can, if you have failures turned on, this can happen to you, where all of a sudden you're just flying and then all of a sudden your tail rotor has basically failed and you're spinning like this. It's not that bad of a spin, but if you don't know how to correct it, you're kind of boned. Okay? So we're going to get into a stabilized hover. We're spinning, entering in 3, 2, 1, engines idle. Allow the aircraft to settle. Raise collective. Ooh, a little bit of a hard landing. Didn't raise fast enough. But as you can see, we didn't set the aircraft on fire. So that kind of concludes our video today. I'll try to come up with some more emergency procedures. I got to practice my auto rotations a little better before I start filming those. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, feel free to hop in the SureGood group. We now have 4 flight instructors. We've hired 2 additional flight instructors. So if you have any questions, there should always be somebody around that can help you out. If not, drop me an IM. We have away message boards at the White Star Airport. And I hope you all have a great evening.